All right, Michael, the Carolina Panthers fired Matt Rhule this Monday here, and now a lot of folks are looking at some of the talented players on this Panthers roster as potential trade candidates. And we're going to start with the running back, the all-pro Christian McCaffrey. Maybe some top landing spots. I know there have been reports that maybe that the Buffalo Bills have reached out. They have denied those reports. Maybe the Eagles, the 49ers, Rams, Broncos. Do you think McCaffrey should be a player who is sought after? And if so, where do you think he would be the best fit?
I think obviously he's a really talented player, and he's trying to stay healthy this year, which is critically important to his career. But I don't see the Panthers. I spent a lot of time listening to Tepper's press conference, which, as Yogi Berra said, I think you can learn a lot from listening. I think there was a lot there in his conference, and he talked about asset management, and he talked about, you only have so many assets, whether it's players, draft picks, salary cap. I get the sense that, yes, they want a quarterback. Yes, they probably would do everything to move up to get a quarterback. But I don't think they're going to have a fire sale. It's not fair to Steve Wilks to have a fire sale. They're going to give Steve Wilks every chance to win games over the next, what do they have, the next 11 games, 12 games? So, and McCaffrey has to be on the team for them to win. Now, do I think Robby Anderson would be one of those guys they trade? Without a doubt. Do I think that they would dump guys that aren't playing very well? Sure. I think that's not. But I don't think it's going to be anybody that could affect Wilks' ability to win the game. I think that they want to be able to get in position to basically use their assets. But what job are they going? Well, who are they going to allure if they tear the team down? Who are they going to allure? And so I know I listened to Sean Payton the other day talk about, would he be interested? And Payton was very clear. He really likes working at Fox. Would that job? I don't know. But I think to me, the problem is, like all these jobs that open, they don't have a quarterback. Every job never does a job open. It's rare that Green Bay open, where you walk into a starting quarterback. That's the issue. So, but while you don't have a quarterback, you can't let your team just completely fall apart.
Now, how much should we make of general manager Scott Fitterer? He's been there since January of 2021, so he's gone through two drafts here with the Panthers, but maybe they want more assets to ensure that they could potentially get a quarterback in this upcoming class here, the 2023 class, which is seen as a pretty talented quarterback draft. How much should we make of maybe Fitterer? A lot of these guys who are being rumored are not guys that he drafted.
Well, I think ultimately, what can you get for those guys? Are you going to get a second-round pick for somebody? That's what you're going to need to move up in the draft. You're going to need a bunch of twos. People say we're going to get assets. Well, if you get a fourth-round pick, does that really help you moving up in the draft? Of course not. So ask the question, what player could you trade that you could get a high number one pick for? I don't think there's anybody. I don't think anybody's giving you a one for McCaffrey, even though he's a really good player. But he's got durability issues. He's got a cap number, so like at some point, like you say, well, we're going to collect assets like it's the NBA. Everybody takes the Oklahoma Thunder model or the Utah, and they think this is what's going to happen. That's not the way the NBA works. That's not the way the NFL works. They don't have a Donovan Mitchell. Nobody's given up that many assets. Nobody's given up so much for Rudy Gobert. Nobody's given up all that stuff for certain players, for Harden and all that. It's a different sport. And to get one of those high picks, you're going to have to collect a bunch of twos. And who's trading away twos and threes if they have a chance to win this year? I don't think very many teams are.
I think the only players that would warrant a first or second round pick that they have on their team are Brian Burns and DJ Moore. But those are guys that you're going to want to keep. those are young DJ players. Moore.
They need Burns. We wrote today for the Daily Coach about Bill Walsh's vision for blueprint. There's culture and then there's a vision for how to win games, right? And most people thought Walsh was a guy that wanted to have, receivers and all that. This is what's so misunderstood about Bill Walsh was the number one thing he wanted to have was defense. And the number two thing he wanted to have is pass rushers who could win the game in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. Like that, to me, is how you build a team for sustainable success. They have some of that in Carolina.
Yeah, to me, I don't think there's really much that they could do. Maybe Robby Anderson, like you hinted at. McCaffrey, how much do you think
they would dump Robby Anderson in a minute if they could? He doesn't really make any plays, and how do they get that? So to me, McCaffrey's a really good player, but that would just kill their offensive chance. If you do that, then basically everybody in the building just goes flat. And so when you fire a coach there's tentacles within the building where the coaches are very nervous. They'll start looking for jobs. They start spending more time on the phone trying to line up their next job than they do working on the opponent. And when you make a move that dramatic and you're only playing 17 games, then you have a lot of people not working on the opponent and you lose the season. Football is such a different sport than baseball or basketball.
What would you, if you were a general manager of one of the other 31 teams, what would you give up for Christian McCaffrey, and what would you give up for Robby Anderson?
I probably wouldn't give up very much for Robby because he's got a huge contract. Even though he's if I were the Rams, his contract, I can't get him under my cap, right? They can't. Mm-hmm. This is the whole problem with Odell. They don't have enough cap room to really give Odell a substantial offer. But if you're like the Green Bay Packers and you want an outside receiver, okay, maybe you give him a 6th-round pick or a 5th-round pick or something like that. You're not going to give very much. You're not. I mean, there's just you're basically unloading the contract is more than anything. Yeah. And so that's the other thing in the NFL is when you make a trade, everybody's asking yourself the question, how many years do I get back from the contract? Now, we've seen trades at the trading deadline where a team needs a receiver and they're desperate, but Robby didn't play well last year and he hasn't played well this year. So, am I really getting a good player or am I getting a name player?
What about McCaffrey?
I mean, I think you could probably get a 2 for McCaffrey. I think there's no doubt. I mean, he's a good player. He is, but you've got to be concerned about durability. He's been on the injury list every week this week, but is that going to get you enough to move up? Does that really help your team? Now, if you did it in the offseason, different story, right? If you did it in the offseason, you'd have a better chance. Now's not the time. You lose the building if you do that now. I'm just telling you, the building just quits on you. You might as well. And if that's what he wants to do, if he wants to basically get the first pick in the draft and pick C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young or whomever the best quarterback is, then basically just tear it all down and don't say to the public, look, Steve Wilks has a chance to keep his job. He should have just gone on the way it was. What's fascinating about all these conversations, is I still go back to Stefanski's decision to go for it on 4th and inches from his own. If just think about this, if that kid who missed the field goal against the Chargers, Cody Davis, I think his name is, or Cody York,
Cade York, yeah.
Cade York. If he misses that field goal opening day, we wouldn't even be having this conversation about Matt Rhule not having his job.
Mm-hmm. If Frankie Louvu catches the pick 6 from Daniel Jones in week 2, we're not having this conversation, but that's how the NFL goes. It's a bottom line business. It's a couple swings in here and there, but all of a sudden you find yourself in a bad spot and looking for a new head coach. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, and for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.